It's season 8 and I have some cracking guests lined up. We'll be diving into all things leadership, teamwork, engagement, mental well-being and high performance. We have the conversations that matter about putting the human factor back into business, because when we get people right, we get business right. If you want to find out more about how to develop an experience that brings out the best in people, get in touch. And if you like the idea of building your leaders, managers and culture, one experiment at a time, Leadership Labs may well be for you. Check out details in the show notes. I'm your host, Lisa, psychologist and psychotherapist and founder of It's Time for Change. Thank you for joining me on Beyond the Water Cooler. So it's just me today, and it feels really lonely sitting here without a guest to talk to and keep me company. But I wanted to record an episode about compassionate leadership. Why? Well, this month is Mental Health Month, and there's lots of advice and chat around mental health and how to improve it. We've just had Stress Awareness Month. Every month in reality throws change and uncertainty in our direction. And we often focus a lot on individuals, and particularly employees. And what I'm really passionate about and where I want to really focus today is thinking about our leaders. So recently I spent a day with a leadership team in a really inspiring company as part of a longer term leadership support plan. The brief was simple: to help people feel confident about the future, to feel strong as a team, and to deal with any emotional challenges arising from their roles. Now, the team is already one of the best that I've come across. And so this actually showed a huge insight on part of their MD, who really understands the need to look after the people who are in turn looking after the rest of the workforce and paving the way for the company to be the best it can be in the future. But I see companies often forgetting that. There's this pressure, this expectation on leaders and managers to look after their teams really well, to get it right. And it puts a huge amount of pressure on their shoulders. The sense of you've got to be compassionate to other people. But it really misses an important point for me, which is about leaders checking their own capacity. So when we think about compassion, it often starts with noticing how someone else is doing. The problem with that is we often take that for granted. We accept that I'm fine, thanks. We take it at face value. And we often don't ask that of ourselves. We don't take the space. It doesn't even occur to us to ask ourselves that question, how are we really doing? But let's just for a minute think about asking other people that question. When you ask people how they're doing, are you actively looking for evidence that what they're saying is true? Are you spotting signs of misalignment between the behaviours that you're observing and their words? Are you asking more questions to engage that individual to really check out what they've said and what isn't being said? You have to avoid that feeling like an interrogation. If this is not your natural skill set in terms of natural inquiring mind and curiosity, then make sure you don't have a sort of set of questions in your head that you've got to whiz through to get all the answers to jump to your conclusion at the end, because you want to communicate genuine care and genuine interest. But it's one thing noticing someone else is struggling. We then have to provide the emotional response, an appropriate emotional response. And that alone takes a huge number of people out of their comfort zone, because that's around emotional intelligence. And again, something that many organizations take for granted of their leaders, of people in general. It used to be a real buzzword. I remember doing so many sessions, providing so many sessions for different organizations around emotional intelligence, individual workshops or whole days and sort of recurring events and so on, but it's now really fallen aside in sort of favour of more up-to-date, buzzier concepts. But it's still a really core need, and it really undermines all the other work we put into working with leaders and companies and so on if they don't have the skills they need to be able to be self-aware and communicate well with each other. And it also underpins psychological safety. So thinking about emotional intelligence and your relationship with that, just think about a time when you've perhaps been on the receiving end of an exchange at work where you have felt listened to, you have felt supported, you felt cared for by that person who was talking to you or asking you about something. Think about what it helped you feel, what helped you, how it helped you think, how it helped you communicate. And now think about the opposite. Think about a time when you've been on the receiving end of an exchange with someone at work where you didn't feel listened to. You didn't feel that they understood what you were saying. You didn't feel cared for or supported. And it really highlights the need for an appropriate emotional response when we're talking with someone. That requires us to get outside of our head if we are someone who's very logical, and much more into our body in terms of feeling the emotional response, engaging what's needed. It might not be that you need to problem solve at all. It might just be that you need to listen, and you can communicate that you know that situation is hard for that person. Emotional intelligence really can be a game changer. But emotional intelligence all starts with self-awareness and awareness of others, and that takes both time and intention. So when we make that happen, it helps with every aspect of our work, including how we navigate times of change, times of uncertainty, dealing with big challenges that we face. And let's face it, there are quite often a number of those. So when I was working with a team recently around emotional intelligence, and particularly around a transition that they were going through, one leader provided this comment, and he said, "I like the openness in the team. At times you think that all these thoughts and feelings are in your own mind, but it clearly is a group thought. I think what came from this is that we must move as a one. We have to be strong. And I believe this activity cemented that belief in our team." Imagine the impact that a mindset like that has on the ability to develop people, develop a team, and adapt as people's roles and responsibilities and requirements of them evolve. But I'm going to dive into emotional intelligence another time, because that is not the topic for today. I want to go back to compassionate leadership and responding appropriately to what other people communicate. So a leader or manager may have provided a helpful response to another employee who's explaining or communicating that they're not in a great place. But what then? Well, often those people who show that degree of care to someone else wants to help. They want to alleviate that struggle. So people who genuinely care about others often will take on more. They want to try and step in and resolve the problems that that person they're talking to is no longer experiencing that struggle, that discomfort. But those people trying to help fail in most cases that I see, to self-check first. And self-checking is really, really vital. Self-checking involves a number of aspects. So what is my intention? Why am I doing what I'm doing? So am I stepping in and trying to solve this problem, trying to help this individual, trying to alleviate their struggles, their suffering, because I genuinely care? Or am I doing it because I'm trying to look good? And being honest with yourself. Thinking as well, as you self-check, how am I doing? So do I have the capacity to take on what this person is sharing with me? Or am I at risk of burnout? Can I take on anything more? Now, often when we're in a role as a leader or a manager, we assume it's our job to take that all on. But we have to have boundaries. We have to know where our limits are, and we have to know what to do when we are at that boundary ourselves and we can't take on anymore. If we choose to ignore that, then we are putting our own mental well-being at risk. And all that comes down to your resources, about your time, your mental capacity. Do you have the skills you need, depending on what someone's requiring of you? It's also okay not to try and resolve people's problems. And I think when we realize that, it really takes the pressure off us. There's a sense that if someone shares something with me and I'm more senior to them, then I have to resolve that problem. You don't have to do that. You can still show you care. So before you jump in with a response when someone shares something with you, then you need to pause, because when we pause, we can collect our thoughts about what it is we're going to say and how we are going to respond. Otherwise, we tend to just respond in a very quick way, a bit like the question, how are you doing? Yeah, I'm fine, thanks, without really thinking about what it is we're communicating. So we don't want to react in a just kind of automatic way. We want to be very conscious about how we're reacting. If you feel unable to take action yourself to alleviate this other person's struggle, then think about who else can help. And if there's something that you can do, which might not be the ideal, it might not be your sort of grade A response, but if there's something you can do, then potentially offer that. So it's not about having to be the best. And I think that, again, there's a lot of pressure on people to think that they always have to be, acing their game. They have to be the best they can possibly be. Well, actually, it's just not possible. And I think to understand that as long as we are doing the best we can in that moment, it might not be our best in terms of our ideal, but in that moment, if we are doing what we can, whether that's helping a little bit, or whether that's guiding towards someone else, then that's really helpful. But it does require you to accept that you can't help with everything. So as a leader, you can identify what people might be struggling with in your organization. What is it that's causing them stress or anxiety? What's causing them some sort of discomfort? What's getting in the way of them being able to thrive? Now, as a leader, that's where you have a real in. You have a place to look at what's going on in the wider organization rather than individual level. And you probably have data to highlight some of the challenges that people are experiencing when they're talking about stuff that's getting in the way for them, stuff that's causing them to feel some sense of discomfort or struggle. If you're not sure about the data you have, or perhaps you want to look at different surveys, then I'm going to put a link in our show notes to some of the companies that we partner with who have really good survey tools that might be able to help. But use resources as well to find out what's getting in the way in terms of team discussion frameworks. Again, I'll put links in the show notes, such as stress mapping or tackling anxiety collectively. So they're frameworks which are about assisting a collective conversation within your team. It's about creating the space to explore the stuff that gets in the way of us feeling how we want to feel and performing in the way that we want to perform at work. It's about creating a space for you to explore the practices that go on in your organization, about creating a space to explore what's going on for each other day to day. And that's the stuff that often doesn't happen. We talk about mental health, we talk about stress and so on. It's often, I see people trying to put in new initiatives, sort of new shiny plans and projects to try and address some of these needs. And actually, I think it's often a case of going back to the basics, back to the fundamentals of just creating that space to really find out, really understand what's going on. But sometimes creating that space and having a bit of a blank sheet can feel a bit too vague, too unstructured. It might feel like an ineffective use of time because it's not crossing off some of the things on our list that are the sort of more tangible demands made of us. But here's the thing. When we have time to have the conversations that really matter, we don't feel the need as leaders to have to fix all the problems. We don't feel the need to have all the answers, because amazing things just happen in that space when we have genuine conversation that's underpinned by curiosity and a want to explore, a want to understand, and a want to just shape practice. So checking in with ourselves and each other, being able to tell our stories, being able to recognize and take time to discuss what is working, what isn't, perhaps currently, perhaps from the past that we want to bring forward with us, perhaps for the future. Understanding what drives us, what our priorities are and why, for ourselves, for our peers as well. What we want collectively for the future as a team is powerful stuff. For skeptics listening, and I know there will be some who think that this unstructured time stuff is a bit unnecessary, here's a comment from a managing director who was who instigated the day that I spoke about just now. He said this was undoubtedly one of the most powerful and positive development sessions that we have ever had as a team. We didn't have lots of new material for people to try and get their heads around and to take away and to put into practice, and lots of new learning and so on. The learning was about hearing each other's stories and hear each other talk about what they were struggling with and what they thought was great and what they didn't think was so great. That really unstructured space, which has some key questions, some key processes to enable people to be able to speak up openly, honestly, being vulnerable, is so, so key. But it does require psychological safety. Being able to be vulnerable and to share how we're really doing and how we're really feeling with those we work with enables people to really feel understood and supported, but it has to happen within an environment that enables that to happen. Someone else said on that day, when we looked at emotional intelligence and we looked at strengths and we looked at how we share and open up with each other, this helped me to understand some other people's anxieties, so I felt less alone in my negative thoughts. And that individual went on to say, I had a reflective moment during the session, and I now understand that I need to put myself in his shoes. Imagine the difference that would make to your team's alignment, communication, and performance if everyone was able to have greater empathy for each other. I was about to say it's so simple, and it is so simple. And I was about to say it just takes the space and the time. I'm going to stop myself saying just, because I keep getting picked up on that. Actually, there's a real skill to facilitating that session, and there's a real skill for enabling that psychological safety to be realized, that people can engage really, really well. And I see that in some teams, I see it in some leaders, and they are exceptional at that. And some other people, it's just not in their skill set, in their confidence, that steps outside their comfort zone. And so if that's you, it's okay to reach out and get help. Sometimes having someone else just coming in and guiding these sessions can be really, really helpful. That space to have those conversations also helps people to think about what they're doing well as leaders, to build confidence, and that in turn strengthens people's resilience. And I think often, again, when I see work around mental health well-being or leadership management competence and development, is often focusing around sort of deficit approach. This is what's missing and we need to fill those gaps. Actually, when we spend time helping people think about what it is that they are doing well, what they are good at, and particularly when teams notice that in each other and they feed that back, it's really, really empowering. So one leader who we did some of this strengths work with said he would have given the activity, which we were rating as an evaluation out of 4, he said he would have given it a 5 if he could, because of the value it provided. The MD commented that this was extremely humbling as an experience, such a positive one. Too often we focus on development needs or areas of weakness, and it's easy to overlook the very positive qualities that each of us have. Another leader shared that Knowing people have some really good opinions of me helps with my imposter syndrome and confidence. We really don't need to overcomplicate this stuff. So my question to you is this. If you're serious about improving mental well-being, if you're serious about developing psychological safety, increasing emotional intelligence, driving high performance, aligning your teams, preparing people for change and uncertainty, you need to start with the people at the top of your organization. The leaders and the managers are setting the tone and defining the culture. They are the leaders who are going to create the right environment for other initiatives to work. As I repeatedly bang on about, there's no point in trying to mend individuals or just work at an individual level if they are then trying to operate in a system that is flawed, that in an environment that doesn't allow them to flourish. We need to stop being passive and assuming this stuff will happen, or assuming that people have these skills and the resource to make this happen, because it often doesn't. We have to intentionally set about creating the time and the ability for this to happen. Are you doing it? Are you looking after your leaders in terms of showing them compassion, helping them put in boundaries so that they are not constantly putting themselves at risk of burnout? Are you helping your leaders strengthen as a team because they understand how to support each other better, where their struggles are, where their strengths are? If you want to find out more about how I can support your people, get in touch. As one leader commented at the end of our day together, your contributions bring so much thought, emotional intelligence, and awareness to the team. Your impact has been significant, and I'm grateful for the positive influence you've had on our work and our team dynamics. That's an unashamed plug, because when I get feedback like that, it reminds me why I do what I do and why I love it so much. So that's me. If you're interested in joining myself and Jem Ellison of Heart Leadership on a 6-month journey where we collaborate with other leaders, we pull amazing leaders together to explore and resolve challenges through experimentation to develop practice, then again, get in touch, because the leadership labs might be for you. And I'll put a link to those in the show notes as well. We've created a space that we're really proud of, where people actually get to experience compassion and psychological safety. And it really does turn traditional development programs around people development on their head. So check out the lab's info on my website. Be kind to yourself, be kind to your peers, and remember, we're only human. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. What have you taken from it? What has it inspired you to think about or do differently? Please give the podcast a simple thumbs up on Apple or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I'd be especially grateful if you leave a short review. It makes a real difference. If you join the club, you'll be the first to hear about relevant updates and free downloadable resources that are part of developing practice and performance. Do reach out to me directly to discuss your challenges at work. And if we're not already acquainted on LinkedIn, let's connect. All the links you need are in the show notes. Until next time, bye for now.